Hey everybody, welcome back to BobkeTV. Time once again at long last for the broom wagon. Got the good, the bad, and the ugly from the tour down under. Yes, it's race season, folks, already. Music musings. We're just going to focus on one thing. I think you might be able to guess what that will be. And of course, tweet of the week. All of that up on the broom wagon. Okay, everybody, let's get right into the good, the bad, and the ugly from the tour down under. Starting the season off with a bang, a hot one down under. The good, Daryl Impey, overall winner, and showing some very impressive riding. Why has that not happened before for Daryl Impey? I believe he won the Tour of Turkey, although that was something. If you want to watch the last stage with a kilometer to go, if you get bored easy and you have a strong stomach, check that out. But Daryl Impey, overall winner. And a couple of reasons I think we can point to understand how he could do that over a sterling field, great field at the Tour Down Under. First of all, his team, Mitchelton Scott, which formerly was called Orica Scott for 2018, they'll be known as Mitchelton Scott. Australian World Tour squad, big rendezvous for that team. We'll get to another part of the good from that team also in a moment. And also, Daryl's been working for other riders for many years, and generally speaking, for the Orica team in the past, Simon Gerrans has been their designated leader and has come up with 4 wins. So Daryl Impey's efforts on behalf of his teammates have generally translated into tremendous success, but he took a chance for himself in this year's Tour Down Under and came up with the goods. Also the goods, his teammate, Caleb Ewan, with a big stage win. Mitchelton Scott team, gonna have to practice that a few times before in the heat of the moment can just pull that right out of the bag. They've been Orica for a while, so always a challenge for the commentators. But Caleb Ewan showing a clean pair of wheels to some fantastic sprinters who we'll get to in a moment also. And I'm going to call it right here, right now, stage win, Tour de France, Caleb Ewan. He's scheduled to make his debut. If that does happen, I believe he has the speed to beat the very best in the world. And the Tour de France is the place to do it. Also to the good, Andre Greipel. 2 stage wins. Andre, pretty disappointing season in 2017 by any stretch of his previous records. Only 5 wins. He'll double that this year. He's already got 2. He might even triple that this year. And Andre Greipel also a stage win, maybe 2 in this year's Tour de France. Also to the good, Elia Viviani from the Quick Step team. Just joined them from Sky and already gets a win for Quick Step. His teammate, Fernando Gaviria, who will be the top sprinter on the squad for 2018, also with the stage win in the Tour of San Juan. So Quick Step picking up right where they left off from 2017 in the win circle. You got to hand it to Peter Sagan, to the good also. Won the People's Choice Criterium, which is an event that's associated with the Tour Down Under. It's a couple of days before the Tour Down Under starts. Beat Andre Greipel, Caleb Ewan, all the sprinters that were in Tour Down Under in that one. A great win by Peter Sagan. But stage number 4, really spectacular. And this is what makes Peter Sagan so lethal. The other top sprinters, Caleb Ewan, Olivia Viviani, 11 minutes, 30 seconds behind. And Andre Greipel over 17 minutes behind. That's why Peter wins so frequently. Smaller group, maybe 30, 40 riders in the front group at the end of stage number 4. Smoked all of them. And put time into a lot of very, very solid climbers. So Peter Sagan, absolutely lethal from reduced groups with sprint finishes. And he's already got over 100 wins in his professional career, and he might double that by the time he's done. Still got a long ways to go, and starting off the year absolutely fantastically. Riding well at the start of the season, as he did last year. Richie Porte didn't quite get the overall win, but he dominated the Queen Stage, Wollonga Hill. They could rename that the Richie Port Climb from the Tour Down Under. And his demeanor, his body language throughout the week of racing seemed very calm, seemed happy to be there, happy to enjoy the crowds and his teammates and putting in big efforts, and podium Tour de France, most certainly. And in the Musette Musings, we're going to get to what I think might happen as far as the start list for the Tour de France in July. But Richie, if Froome doesn't start, most certainly a candidate for the win, riding very well. But that's a mighty big if. Also to the good, Nicolas Dlamini from Dimension Data, King of the Mountain. First World Tour race, debut on a World Tour team, King of the Mountain jersey, bringing it home to Dimension Data. He's from South Africa, as is the team, so great result. 22 years old, got a big future ahead of him. And a solid way to start your career with it, bringing home a jersey. That's awesome. That's the good. Peter Sagan. We're going to get to the bad in a second, but I want you to look at a quick attempt by Paul Sherwin to interview Peter Sagan after his win in stage number 4. Here you go.
Well, Peter, that was a very hot day in the saddle, but it's your first stage victory at the Santos Tour Down Under. Just getting a few more calories inside him. Give us a couple of seconds. It's been a pretty hard day out there, Phil, for Peter Sagan.
Very hard.
Peter, it was a tough day, and getting your first stage victory was very, very special for you, I would expect.
I'm very happy. I have to eat first.
Okay, well, Phil, let's just give Peter Sagan a few more minutes to try and recover from that, because I think we all know at 44, 45 degrees Celsius out on the roads, and it's an awful lot hotter out here on the finishing line. Peter will come and talk to us again in a few moments' time. Let's just go back to you guys in the studio.
It must have been quite warm for Peter Sagan to not be able to do the interview until he at least had a sip of water and some nutrition. It didn't take him long to recuperate, though. Here he is a few minutes later helping the volunteers clean up the course after the race.
Thank you. Well done today. Excellent.
Guys, I have a real job to do now.
How much that, thanks, buddy. $5 an hour?
Yes.
We start at 6:30 tomorrow.
Oh, fantastic. Look at that. Excellent ride today.
Do you mind? Yeah, sure. Oh, sorry. Thanks so much.
Okay, now.
Ja, man, did you want me to? I know.
Good?
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Good job. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Peter,
Thank you.
congratulations. Good job.
Thank you.
Well done, Peter.
I'm not sure if there's anything Peter Sagan cannot do. Except perhaps control the UCI officials when they attempt ever so poorly to adjudicate sprint finishes. Don't write about that. That's not what this is about. That's all behind us. But Peter Sagan, big win on stage number 4. Got the criterium win, the People's Choice criterium, a couple days before the start of the Tour Down Under. So 2 wins for Peter Sagan already this year. let's move on to the bad, and alluding to it a moment ago with Peter Sagan unable to, at least initially, talk to Paul Sherwin after the race. 118 degrees. You would imagine the extreme weather protocol would be put in place when it gets 118 degrees. The rider's rep for the Tour Down Under was Adam Hansen of the Lotto Soudal squad, and he had gotten a barrage of both sides. Let's stop. A lot of riders wanted to stop and not continue the race when it got to be that hot, but a lot of riders wanted to carry on and do the stage. So very tough for Adam Hansen to be caught in the middle of it, and some of the headlines and some of the tweets, some of the abuse he had to absorb because of that, not easy. And read what he had to say about it, and it's instructive. It's elucidating what goes on in a professional bike race and how difficult it is to arrive at a consensus. And that's where the UCI comes in and says, after doing some scientific research, what is the highest temperature that is safe to race in? Is it 110? Is it 115? Is it 120? Whatever it is, figure it out, and that's simple. Once it gets that hot, you stop the race. I mean, that would be the presumptive thing to do. Everybody finds some shade. Hopefully there's enough hydration, but generally, following the bike racers, enough hydration, enough resources to at least survive. Wait for the team buses if you have to, but maybe in some races, like the Tour of Oman, there is no shade in some of the stages. And if it gets to be, or it's even predicted to be, over 110, 115, don't race. So let's see what the UCI does, and not have a guy like Adam Hansen, who's trying to do his best, get caught in the middle of a tremendous amount of conflicting agendas. And we have an ironclad rule. 115, that's it. No racing. And then you go on to the next day. But as we've seen in the past, the wheels of change grind ever so slowly with the UCI. But I'm going to say this, the extreme weather protocol, it's a work in progress, but it's a great idea. And let's hope that Adam Hansen's patience hasn't worn out and he gives up on it. Also the bad, in the People's Choice criterion, Christopher Halverson debut with Team Sky. Let's watch the last couple 100 meters. Sprint unfolding. Sagan versus Greipel. And look over to the left-hand side of your screen. Oh! Halverson going up against the barriers, dislodging, by the way, a poster, one of the sponsorship posters, presumably. And this could have been way worse if that had spun into the field. You can only imagine what might have happened. And we can do better. We can do better than that. We can make the races safer by making sure that everything that the riders go through, especially what's controllable, is fastened and secured and is safe. That could have been so incredibly bad. Whew. So, Halverson, broken bone in his hand, and his debut did not last very long. That's really bad luck. Supposed to do the Tour Down Under, but instead had to cool his jets. And let's hope that it heals up quickly and Halverson is back on the open roads training and racing again soon. The ugly, whoo, baby. Let's have a look at this one. FDJ, Steve Morabito. We see the aftermath, and I can tell you, when he crashed, he dislocated his shoulder and popped it back in and kept going to the finish line. Whew. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Cyclists, they don't look that tough. When you look at them, they are some of the, let's say, not all of them, but a lot of them, and Steve Morabito is one of them. Skinny, on the skinny side of the professional athlete spectrum, but some of the toughest athletes on the planet. So Steve Morabito also, best of luck for a speedy recovery, and hopefully you're back out on the roads as soon as possible and racing again. All right, everybody, up next is the Musette Musings, and it's all about Team Sky and Chris Froome. All right, up in the Musette Musings, Chris Froome and Team Sky and his panel of experts have come up with the reason why Chris Froome had a urine sample with twice the allowed amount of salbutamol. I might have misspoken before in saying he ingested twice as much, but the fact is that his urine sample contained twice as much salbutamol than is allowed. And the reason for that is, get this now, and I thought of a lot of things, what the explanation might be, but this one I didn't think of. Kidney failure. Kidney failure, I think you need dialysis. The Team Sky solution was to go on and win the Tour of Spain. So, and not, okay, a physician that understands entirely what the ramifications of kidney failure are. But a quick search on the internet reveals that nausea, inability to urinate, dizziness, vomiting, and eventually coma and death. So when you look up kidney failure, nowhere does it say carry on and win a Grand Tour in professional cycling. And whether you believe that or not, I mean, you can comment on that. Do you believe that Chris Froome's kidneys failed, so he had twice the amount of salbutamol in his urine? Please feel free to comment. Let's keep the language nice and squeaky clean. I want to commend everybody on doing that for the most part. And I'll say this also. Anytime you talk about the doping issues in cycling, it gets heated, it gets hot. It gets so hot. So let's just try to play it cool. Just your opinion. That's fine. That's all we need. But it's another thing and a long list of things that Team Sky is asking us as fans, as sponsors, as race organizers, as officials, as his fellow competitors, we'll get to that in a minute also, to overlook. I'm going to give you a quick list of the things Team Sky has asked us to overlook in the recent past. This is by no means comprehensive, but here's a few of the highlights. Dr. Geert Leenders, lifetime ban. Dr. Leenders oversaw a systematic doping program at Team Rabobank and has now been banned for life. Team doctor for Team Sky overlooked that, everybody. Their explanation at the time, we didn't know about that. I find that a little bit hard to believe. Rabobank, one of the most notorious doping squads in the history of professional cycling. And to hire his team doctor, all right, you asking us to overlook that, Team Sky? Okay. Let's see, what else have we got? A supply of testosterone, a truckload, a busload, a package of testosterone sent to British Cycling headquarters, which, by the way, it was at the Manchester Velodrome, headquarters of Team Sky also at the time, overseen by Dave Brailsford at the time. Their explanation, wrong address. Okay, we'll overlook that. Next thing that comes to mind, the Jiffy bag. An official of British Cycling, Simon Cope, I believe, if memory serves, sent with a package from the medical staff to France, to the Dauphiné, a few days before the start of the 2012 Tour de France. What was in the bag, no one can remember. What the explanation turned out to be, it was a decongestant that's available in every pharmacy, every street corner in France, but we're expected to believe that and overlook maybe a more obvious explanation. The Fancy Bears hack into the TUE program for professional cycling revealed that Bradley Wiggins, just before winning the 2012 Tour de France, had a therapeutic use exemption for corticosteroids that he employed for the Tour de France in 2012 and before the Tour of Italy, which he was trying to win also. There was no explanation given for that, except he needed corticosteroids to win the Tour. I guess it was allergies. I guess that, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bradley Wiggins had allergies, so he needed steroids to win to compete in the Tour. Overlook that. Moving forward, let's I guess we could include Josh Edmondson's contention that tramadol, narcotic painkiller, is used indiscriminately at Team Sky. He became dangerously addicted to that, and still struggling with some of those issues to this day. And fast forward, and the explanation from Team Sky, tramadol, we use it. I mean, they didn't give an explanation for that, as far as I know. If they have done, please let me know. And any Team Sky officials want to clarify any of these things that I'm misspeaking about, there's a comment section. Please feel free to weigh in. And so if we overlook all of that, we arrive at the Chris Froome twice the amount of salbutamol in his urine during the Vuelta a España. Chris has insisted that he took the same amount as always, which we're supposed to overlook the fact that he's already passed hundreds of doping controls and has had asthma since childhood and has been presumably using salbutamol to treat that throughout his racing career. And rather than perhaps imagine Chris took more than he normally does to produce twice the amount in his urine. And we were asked to overlook all those other doping tests to the real explanation, which turns out to be kidney failure. And as I just said, kidney failure is pretty serious. And it doesn't seem to be the most plausible explanation. But we are being asked by Team Sky to overlook the most plausible explanation, which is Chris Froome took too much. He ingested, and I'm not going to presume that it was any other way than his puffer, his inhaler, although you can share in the comments section how he might have, besides kidney failure, given a sample with twice the allowed amount of salbutamol. This is not even close. This is not even close to being anywhere near the gray area. And to extend the benefit of the doubt when we've already heard so many questionable practices at Team Sky. This is the latest. This is the latest request from Chris Froome and Team Sky to overlook what is in plain sight. And I, quite frankly, am tired of overlooking that. The normal protocol, when this was exposed back in December, was you go to the UCI headquarters, you try to replicate the conditions whereby taking the same amount of salbutamol that you always do, as Chris Froome has said, you have to show them that you will have a urine sample with twice the salbutamol in it. Very difficult to do, I'll grant you that, but you can extrapolate the data based on what the results are in the laboratory, which Diego Ulisi did do, by the way, could not definitively prove that he hadn't taken too much salbutamol, and because of that produced a sample with more than the limit. I have a feeling, you can also, everybody out there can extrapolate on whatever you'd like to on this. I have a feeling that Team Sky knew and knows that they cannot demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt through the normal scientific procedure that had been used in the past to show an athlete can produce twice the salbutamol in their urine by taking the same amount. I think that that's impossible for them. So, and they've had since September 20th to come up with something, some plausible explanation, so that the fans of the sport can continue to believe in it, and that the clean riders still have a chance at a level playing field. And that is the crux of this entire discussion. If you're racing clean, do you have a fair chance at achieving your maximum results? Or are certain riders on certain teams making that very difficult to do? That's the crux of the matter. And for my money, Team Sky has so far made it very difficult to overlook these inconsistencies. I recommended weeks ago that his Vuelta title be taken away, his medals at the World Championships be taken away, and he starts immediately a 6-month suspension. Team Sky is not going for that, and I understand that. They got a lot riding on it. But what's the most plausible explanation? That's what I'd like everybody to ask themselves and comment. Is kidney failure, and maybe there's some scientists out there that could help us understand this, and if his kidneys were failing, did they suddenly recuperate overnight so that his levels were normal the rest of the Vuelta and the World Championships and all the days leading up to that? It's going to be very difficult for Sky to prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt. And that is what they are required to do. That the onus is on Sky and Chris Froome to prove his innocence, not for the sport. The proof for the sport is in the urine sample, twice the salbutamol. And let me ask you this. If the level for EPO is 0 and you have anything above 0, would there be any question of how that got in your urine? It's a little bit different, but also let's ask ourselves enough questions so we understand this, and that the proper sanctions are imposed to protect the integrity of the sport and to enable the clean riders a fair chance at achieving their maximum results. It's a mess. It's going to continue to be a mess, especially because Chris Froome and Team Sky are insisting on not suspending him, and he's free to race. When that is going to happen, not sure. He generally starts his year in February, his racing season. And this is, I'll make a prediction. If he's not suspended and this is not adjudicated, every day is going to get worse and worse and worse. There's going to be more pressure. And by the time we get to the Giro, and if Chris insists on racing the Giro and the Tour, it's going to be a disaster for the sport. It's going to be really, really tough. There will be no focus except that. That's my prediction. Nobody will be wanting to talk about anything else except if not, Chris Froome should be there. So let's hope that that does not happen. Okay. I'm tired of talking about it already, but anyways, I'm sure it's not going to go away for a long time. A little bit more. UCI President David Leparchant has said that Team Sky should suspend Chris Froome while they're trying to figure out how this case should be adjudicated. I think that's pretty reasonable. Romain Bardet said the same thing. He was Bardet third in the Tour de France, so he has a lot to say about it. And being a French rider, been questioned about that a lot, I'm sure already. And this, I'll quote Bardet, "It makes a laughing stock out of our sport." And Bardet is asking the same thing that Leparchant has asked, that Team Sky suspend Froome voluntarily until we can figure out an adequate explanation or an appropriate sanction. Leparchant also went on to say he's going to boycott the Tour of Flanders one-day classic in the spring because Lance Armstrong has been asked to attend as a guest, do a sportif ride over the same course. I'm not sure exactly what Lance has been asked to do, but to give an address, speak to a group a couple days before. And the promoters of the Tour of Flanders have invited Lance, and Lance accepted, and David Leparchant will be boycotting it because he doesn't think Lance Armstrong should be at the Tour of Flanders as a guest of the race. I have to disagree with that. And I'll tell you why. Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line with former dopers in their participation of the sport? Can you be a team manager if you've been embroiled in a doping controversy? Jonathan Vaughters, Alexander Vinokourov, Matt White. Can you be a TV commentator? Laurent Jalabert and Richard Virenque work regularly on French TV. Can you be a sports director? Can you have any involvement in the sport of cycling after your career if you have been embroiled in any sort of doping controversy? And you can't just say that Lance was somehow responsible for the entire apparatus. It's just not fair unless you try to get rid of everybody. And that, it would be hard to imagine what the landscape of cycling would look like if every single rider that was positive for drugs or embroiled in some doping controversy cannot participate in any way, shape, or form. Grand Fondos, can you have a Grand Fondo in your name? Ricardo Rico has promised to race again when his suspension expires. And he'll be 40. He'll be 40, and he says he's going to race again. Would Leparchant say, fine, Ricardo Rico can be a professional cyclist, but Lance Armstrong can't visit in any capacity the Tour of Flanders? It's ridiculous. It's a silly position that is not tenable, and hopefully he'll get over that. And I don't see why Lance or any of the other riders cannot be involved. And the question is the sport redeemable? And I believe it is. And if you say that it's redeemable except for this one individual, it doesn't make sense to me. Let me know. Can Lance come to some races or not? And again, please, come on. Just, keep it clean. All right, everybody. Up next, tweet of the week. Here's the tweet of the week. Comes to us from Louis Menkes. Take a look at this. as Paul Sherwin would say when he's ordering beef, extra rare in France, Signon, s'il vous plaît. Lobster eyes. Oh my God, that's painful to look at. The sunscreen, everybody, use it. Even underneath your jerseys. Because apparently jerseys these days don't do enough to block the sun. I remember in the day doing long rides under the hot sun, and sometimes the darker letters on the jersey would be tattooed temporarily into our backs, but I don't remember it ever quite so graphic as this one from Louis Meintjes. Louis, get the sunscreen. It's going to be a hot summer. All right, everybody, that's it for the broom wagon. Thanks for your patience in the interim between broom wagons. Comment. I think you know the ground rules. Subscribe. Please keep the subscriptions coming. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And thumbs up. Greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot, everybody.